Well, thank you everybody for coming. How's everyone doing? You jet lagged? Yeah, okay. So far I think the longest plane flight, 36 hours, and that was for Alan from Argentina. Has anybody beaten that? Show of hands. Oh, next time? Okay, we're going to hold it in Patagonia then, just to mess with everybody, right? Okay, so welcome. Thank you for coming. First off, about the title of this talk. The first thing you learn when you invite me to a conference is I'm like the worst guy in the world to invite. I don't reply to emails, and they ask for slide decks, and I don't make one. And then they say, what's the title of your talk? And I don't give one. So actually, I didn't come up with this title, Making Ethereum Classic Utilitarian Platform. And I'm very grateful that they put something in there. But anyway, I thought a bit on the plane ride over, what should I talk about? And so I figured I'll talk about three things, very concise things, not broad at all. Figured I'll talk about philosophy, community, and technology. See, that's a nice, small, restricted scope, right? Okay. So philosophy of what? Well, the philosophy of Ethereum. One of the advantages of being me is I've been around long enough and fired enough to have the luxury of understanding what we thought at the time. And then I'm going to talk about the community of Ethereum, in particular Ethereum Classic, and then a bit about technology and where we can go, what we can do, how these things ought to work, okay? And then you can ask some questions, and at some point you'll get tired, and I'll run away so you can all get drunk. How's that sound? All right, okay, it sounds like a game plan. So let's talk about philosophy. So the first question is, when did we have two Ethereums? You see, the conventional answer is we had two Ethereums after the DAO. And the answer is no. We actually had two Ethereums from the very damn beginning. But we didn't know that. In the beginning, we had two philosophies at the same time. One was this notion of code is law. Like words were invented, illegality, and so forth. What was that all about? Well, illegality was this concept that code can't care. It doesn't matter what you're running. You run it like anything else. It doesn't matter of the consequences. You just do it and accept it. But then there was this other philosophy. This was this notion of a world computer. This was Vitalik's pet child. He loved this idea. This idea that you could have universal infrastructure that one day would get rid of Amazon EC2 and get rid of all these other things. And this thing would be this beautiful layer, a computation layer to be added to the internet as ubiquitous as BitTorrent or something else. And that computer would just work. You can deploy your Dapps on it, these types of things. Now here's the fundamental problem. Code is law and world computer, these things are philosophically so different they can't coexist at the same time. When you're the world computer, you have to fork a lot. You have to embrace mutability. You have to have a lot of flexibility in your platform. When your code is law, you're like Bitcoin, where you set the principles, whether they're good principles or bad principles, you just accept them, live with them, deal with them, and build on top of them. They're like artificial laws of physics in a certain respect. You know, if you're a mountain climber, you can't suddenly say, boy, gravity is really inconvenient to me. It'd be just so nice if gravity would stop for a moment and give me a break. You can't do it. That's the law of physics. And so similarly, we have money, like Bitcoin, where it behaves in a certain way, regardless if it's convenient to you or not, regardless if the exchange gets hacked or not, regardless if your wallet has a critical flaw in it that destroys a bunch of tokens or not. Doesn't matter. By the way, the parity hack is nothing new. This happened in the Bitcoin world. Plenty of people have been burned and lost Bitcoins because they screwed up while designing their wallets. It happens. And when you deal with these physics, it's just like falling off the cliff. Sometimes there's a body on the floor, right? That's not compatible with the world computer idea. Now, is it? Because the world computer is all about bringing tons of people in, getting as many Dapps as possible, getting as many partners as possible, setting up an enterprise alliance, and getting everyone into the game so they can all get behind this thing and all build their flavor of this thing. And we're going to have 700 flavors of it, and they all come in black. They're great, see? And so what does it actually mean? Well, it actually means because they're philosophically different to the extent that they require to live on different chains, it means they're not actually competitors with each other. We compete with different notions. You know, Coda's law is like a better commodity in a certain respect. It's like a better flavor of digital gold, a more capable version of it. Frankly, we compete far more with Bitcoin than we do with Ethereum at this stage. So that's the first point, is a philosophical point in a certain respect, is know where you come from and know your community. And to me, Ethereum Classic is basically a digital commodity. It's digital gold, and it's a better flavor of it. And given that, I think that it's really exciting because it can give us a very interesting design space that we can explore that's totally independent of this design space that Ethereum is pursuing. We don't have to embrace proof of stake. We don't have to embrace plasma. We don't have to embrace the fork of the week. And we don't have to correct mistakes immediately after they come in order to preserve an ever-growing community. Instead, we can start with principles, and we can grow from principles. But you say, but Charles, how do you grow from principles? Come on now, we need to get to 1 billion people as quickly as possible. Well, how big is Bitcoin? You know, did they have to wake up and say, boy, how do we change Bitcoin to get more people into Bitcoin? They didn't. They just said, we're going to stay who we are, and no matter what happens, we're going to keep with that original philosophy. So when Mt. Gox collapses and the core developers have millions of dollars of their own money in Bitcoin, not a single one of them said fork to give us our money back. And believe me, that would have been very nice for them to get their money back, but they didn't do it. That's how you build a good ecosystem, on bedrock, on granite. You don't do the convenient, easy, tasty icing. You eat your vegetables, and it allows you to grow and become something great. And that's why Bitcoin is still on top. It's why it's still king of the hill. They have those principles. So I'm very proud that Ethereum Classic has stuck to its guns. It's been very difficult. So let's talk a little bit about community. When I first came into this space, the Ethereum Classic side of things, it was a very volatile time. It was pretty crazy. We had guys like, I think it was Michael Trout, if anybody remembers him, probably a few people, and others who were just off the wall. And some of them were entertaining, and some of them were just downright mean and toxic. And that's okay. The early days of Bitcoin were exactly the same way. We had some really crazy dudes, one of which, whom shall remain nameless, was putting Bible verses into Bitcoin blocks with his mining pool. Okay? I think the dude has 9 kids or something like that. He's just a special camper. And that's great. That's what made Bitcoin fun. You know, I loved going to the early conferences. In fact, there was this one dude named Bruno, and he showed up with a pink tutu on. And he was a tall guy, like 6'4", bald hair, big bushy beard. And he had a tutu on, and he said, "You're Charles." And I was like, "You're Phineas Gage." He's like, "Yeah, I'm Bruno." And I came over and gave him a big hug, and this tutu was all over me. I'll find the photo, I'll tweet it one of these days. But that was Bitcoin. That's where Bitcoin came from. And now Bitcoin's king. So, you know, it's okay to have an exotic, unusual community, and we sure as heck had one. But some of the earliest of the Bitcoin meetings were kind of like this room right here. A lot of people are really passionate. They have a lot of crazy, wonderful ideas. We're talking about teal structures and red structures and so forth. There was some pragmatists who said, damn it, we just want to build technology that works. So you see things like Sputnik and Emerald, and that's just great. And then there's some people who really deeply care about research and say, it's okay to spend 3 years thinking about something. That's what we do. It's okay to engineer something from first principles. That's what we do. We have people who educate the community. Christian Severino's done a phenomenal job with Let's Talk ETC, giving a lot of people here a voice. And that really excites me. So I see a lot of the same elements that made Bitcoin great and wonderful here in the ETC community. And we're actually moving faster than Bitcoin moved, by the way. We didn't have to go through those 3-4 years in the hinterlands. People talk about price. Well, you know, imagine how wonderful it was to be in Bitcoin before $1, watch it go to 30, down to 4, up to 250, down to 80, up to 1,200, down to 250, up to 7,000, and then get 3 airdrops. That's what we dealt with, man. So it's like, who the hell cares, right? Ethereum Classic's doing great. So we have a wonderful community. We really do. And I'm incredibly proud to be a member of it. It's been tremendously fun. I've had some great conversations here, intellectually challenging conversations, deep conversations. And there's a lot of creativity I see here. I see a lot of wonderful people here, you know, and I see all the fights we had with Bitcoin, which is exciting to me because we can resolve those things. So anyway, that's about community. So the last part is the future, technology. What are we going to talk about there? Well, we've gotten to the point where philosophically, I think people are starting to get in their skull that Ethereum Classic and Ethereum aren't competitors. We can play nice together. We can work together. We have common problems we're trying to solve. We've gotten to the point where we have stable, good development teams that are doing amazing work. The Mantis client will be online very soon. Alan, by the way, has done an amazing job. I leave it ambiguous because there's 2 Allens actually on the team. So both of you guys have done a great job, depending upon the week. And ETC Dev has done a great work, and we see a lot of great things coming down that pipeline. It's gotten to a point where we've proven beyond a reasonable doubt that we can keep up with Ethereum Foundation. And in some cases, we're actually better than these guys. We're writing better software. Just as a comparison, Bitcoin Core has about 120,000 lines of C++ code. The Mantis client does more, and it's 10,000 lines of code. It's 12 times more concise. The Sputnik VM idea of pulling the VM out and having it as a standalone and as efficient as it is a phenomenal idea. It's a great piece of engineering. It's far better than anything I've seen coming out of EF, to be honest with you. So frankly, pound for pound, the engineers on our side of the table are doing great work. It's either more concise work, or it's more modular and abstract work, or frankly, it's just smarter work in terms of how we've approached things. To be fair, we have the benefit of hindsight. And to be fair, we also have the benefit of being able to kind of rebuild something someone else has built. Okay, but I don't want to hear any more that we're a copy and paste coin. I don't want to hear any more we don't have any engineers. In fact, I'd love everybody to give our engineers an applaud. Thank you. They earned it, man. I mean, poor Alan McSherry, you'll hear his exodus tomorrow, but as a sneak peek, this guy has a picture of him standing at a lake in Russia in January. I think it was, St. Petersburg? Yeah, it was St. Petersburg. It's like, you go to a lake in Russia at St. Petersburg in January for a project. Try telling your wife that. Hey, I got to just go to Russia for the weekend to go skinny dipping in a lake for a work project. She's like, I thought you were a developer. And that's who we are. So technology-wise, we're stable. But we now have to make some decisions about where do we go. And there's a lot of conflicting views and a lot of things that we have to discuss. For example, do we stay on proof of work or do we go to proof of stake? In my view, I think proof of work's great, and I think we should stay on proof of work. But not everybody agrees with that, so that's a discussion, a debate. And if we stay on proof of work, does it mean we just keep doing what we're doing, or do we entertain the idea that proof of work has evolved a little bit since 2009? There are wonderful proposals like Bizcoin and Bitcoin NG. Andrew Miller has been a thought leader in non-outsourceable puzzles, so we can get rid of mining pools. There's notions like Smart Pool, where you have a peer-to-peer pool. Each and every one of these things should be brought up through the ECIP process that ETC Dev has included. And we should have a big public discussion about these types of things, just like Bitcoin has a public discussion. And I'm very confident at some point we'll come to a good conclusion about it. We have a lot of scalability features that we can put in. For example, IOHK has come up with this great idea, and Stuart, it's non-interactive proofs of work. The proof of work paper came out in 2016. So we have an update to that paper. But basically, the long and short is we can use the fact that you have algorithmic weight with chains to construct a special proof that gives you the ability to not preserve the whole blockchain, but have the same level of security as if you did. So it's useful for side chains, it's useful for SPV, and it'd be really useful for a lot of scalability applications. So we'll write an ECIP for that. It makes perfect sense to bring that in. There's cryptographic questions. I was just at Crypto 17, and one of the keynote speakers was a gentleman who works for Google, and he's part of their quantum computing group. And there's very good evidence that quantum computers will be here within 10 years. So it's a really, really good idea to start having a conversation about what crypto needs to look like for us to be able to survive that transition. So we could embrace new signature schemes. We could make subtle changes here and there to harden the protocol against quantum crypto. But there's a lot of options there. Hash-based signatures, you got lattice-based signatures, and there's trade-offs with all of these types of systems. And are they too new? Yeah, it's a debate. And so it should go through the ECIP process. Then we have a really interesting question, and this is kind of a meta question of how do we decide and how do we pay for things? See, on the other side of the aisle, they have this thing called an ICO. Anybody heard of it, the ICO? Right, so what is the ICO? It's basically some dude issues a token, makes a bunch of commitments and promises. Maybe they're good, maybe they're bad. Hell, Ethereum came from it, Joe. And anyway, at the long and the short is that it's a great way to decentralize fundraising. Now, I'm not going to take a position whether it's a security offering or not. There's plenty of people who believe it is, plenty of people who say it doesn't. The point is it's a capital raising mechanism. And it makes sense for certain cases. But like a hammer, it's not a tool that you can use for every single case. So there are other ways to fund things. For example, there's this notion of a treasury model. What the heck is that? So when you mine, whom do you pay? You pay the mining pool or the miner, right? Block is made, and they get a Coinbase reward. But what if you take some of that Coinbase reward, instead of giving 100% of it to a miner, you take a little sliver off the top, 10%, 20%. Think of it like a tax or something, because everybody loves taxes, right? And you put it into a pool. And then there's some sort of rule for how one can submit a ballot to that pool and get money out of that pool. And that pool is controlled by the protocol itself. Now, this is not a new idea. It's something that's been floating around since the BitShares ideas, perfected by the Dash people. And now we have things like Zcash and Pivx, and everybody has an opinion on how these things ought to do, how they ought to run. Well, IOHK, because we like research, not only did we decide to start studying this, we went a little overboard. We actually designed a new voting system and a completely new treasury system, and God, we love crypto, so we proved it's UC secure. That's universal composability. And so we have this coercion-resistant liquid democracy system, and we'll be publishing a paper, at some point about it. The point is that there are mechanisms to run these things that could give us perpetually tens to hundreds of billions of dollars of capital every single year for everybody to have access to, from dev teams to marketers, for people who want to put on their own conferences. So is this a good idea? There's a debate about it. Some people say yes, some people say no. Who gets to decide? The community should, not any one person. That's my final point, is what I'm most proud about the Ethereum Classic community, is that there is no one in control. You can't point to a single person in ETC and say, if that guy dies, ETC goes away, or is substantially harmed and doomed. Mantis hasn't shipped yet. Exactly 0% of people in the community are right now running my client. So I could get hit by a bus, IOHK can disappear. You know what the net effect right now to ETC would be? Very little. Maybe a year from now we'll be a bigger player, we'll have more influence, but that's based on merit and consent, not by force or fiat. And not because we got some giant pool of capital from an ICO and we're the ones who control it, so everybody just has to listen to what we do. That's a unique ecosystem, and there's actually very few tokens floating around that have that characteristic. And that's what makes me so happy and excited about ETC, is that if we want it, this thing is resilient as Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's plenty resilient. So I'm pretty excited about the tech, I'm pretty excited about the philosophy, I'm pretty excited about the community, and I've loved being here. And I love the invitation. It's great that Grayscale's put this on. It's great that we've had an opportunity to come to meet each other face to face. Actually, I've talked to Stuart for now over a year. I've never actually met him in person, and it's so much fun to do that. And there's so many other people that it's the same case, where I've known you from Slack. You probably think I'm an asshole. That's okay. And hopefully I can change your opinion or reinforce it depending upon our interaction and how tired I am. So anyway, since a lot of people came here, I love Q&A, so I'd love to get your questions, and hopefully I can give you a reasonable answer. Thank you.